So about 3 years ago, I got introduced to machine learning and AI through a friend of mine, and I want to share that story. The reason why is because I feel like it was one of those really aha moments for me where I realized that this is something that I would like to pursue down the line. Uh, Even though there's a lot of like new tools coming out every 3 4 days, we have a lot of new applications that everybody's over, and I feel like it's all overhyped. But if we separate that at its core, machine learning or AI just seems to be the human endeavor of trying to map out how human beings process and learn information and how they, recognize patterns and predict those patterns and trying to make something useful out of that. And so that seems very interesting to me because, one of my goals is to try to teach myself how to learn better. And I feel anybody watching this could also benefit from it. So the story that I want to recount is that about 2 years ago, I was at a friend's house and he does some freelance work for some companies where he's, like, yeah, he's taking their data, he's cleaning it, and then he's like running some models, training some models, and then deploying those models for applications. I didn't understand anything. Had no clue about this entire process, what it is. But so I'm sitting and I'm watching him, and his computer's like running in a corner, and we're sitting and talking for a couple hours. And I ask him after one point, I ask like, hey, what's going on over there? Like, why are you wasting electricity? Your computer's running for such a long time. He's like, well, the model is training itself, and I'm like, what does that mean? And so he goes on to explain that like I input some data, the model kind of like takes its time to train the neurons or those mathematical functions, and then it's primed on the information that I put into it, and then now I can input some new data, and then I'll get some predictions based on how I've trained the model. What I took away from that was I realized like us as human beings, we spend a lot of time consuming data, consuming information, especially now in today's age where we're hyper bombarded with information. Like I wake up constantly checking like news, my phone, updates, all that kind of stuff. And I feel like we absorb a lot of information, but in this really fast-paced world, we don't really give ourselves time to train our brains or train our, train our thinking models, so to say. Might be the wrong term, but thinking models where we don't give them time to process that data and then develop something useful out of it. And so what I'm trying to state here is that there is some inherent value in sitting down very quietly, trying to shut off like all external noise and allowing yourself to kind of just process the information. A really good kind of extrapolation, but also like corroboration of this point would be there's this course by Carol Dweck called Learning How to Learn. I think it's on Coursera or Udemy, not really sure. Coursera, I think. And in that, she says there's a diffuse mode, and in learning there's an active learning process, and then there's a diffuse mode. And she goes on to stress that in that diffuse mode is where your neurons actually create those connections that are important for long-term memory retention. And in that diffuse mode, what you're supposed to be doing is that you're supposed to not be doing anything. So the way that it works is that you actively study for a bit, and then you kind of shut down your brain, or you don't shut down your brain, but you stop learning, and you kind of sit still for a while, let your mind wander, and within that wandering is where those special connections, or your neurons kind of make those connections, and that's later down the line, long term, that is what benefits you when it comes to processing new information. And so it was just interesting. Thought I'd share, and yeah, that's just it.